Dashboard Effect Podcast. I'm Brick Thompson.
I'm Caleb Oakes.
Hey, Caleb, how you doing?
Pretty good.
So it's been a few weeks since we sat down here together.
Yeah, it's been a while. I got a lot to say.
All right, good, good. What's our topic for today?
So let's talk about self-service BI.
Good. All right. So what is self-service BI?
That's a good question. So if we had to boil it down, it's putting data and business intelligence in the hands of people that don't necessarily have BI technical skills and letting them explore the data and get answers from it themselves.
Yeah, okay. That's how I see it too. So you may have people with technical skills, but really it's you probably heard this term, democratization of data, making data available just to regular old business folks who maybe aren't highly technically skilled, but giving them access so that they can do their own analysis and be able to make decisions, that type of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And we're hearing more and more companies really want to move towards this. And I think it really is because if you can allow the data some freedom within the company, you do speed decision making. And you get ideas that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I think the key differentiating factor between regular BI and self-service BI is really you don't have to go to IT every time you want some data.
Right. Yeah. When I worked at my previous job, or one of my first jobs out of college, I was an analyst, and I had to wait on IT for data. And even self-service back then was becoming like something that people wanted you to do, and it was this hot topic and stuff. And that was right about the time where these visualization tools were just kind of gaining popularity. And it started to become, what we're seeing is that it's becoming more and more accessible for companies to actually do this, even though it really hasn't taken off, at least in my view of things, in the last few years, even though people want it to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not as simple as you might think at first.
It's very. I mean, there's a lot to it. There's definitely a lot to it. And like you said, when I was waiting on IT, like I had the technical skill. Like we've progressed a little bit since then. I hope. But I still had to wait 2 weeks before I got a little data change in my data set, and I was still building the reports. But there's both pieces to it, right? There's building the reports, but there's also gaining access and knowing what data you have access to and usually having some sort of control over it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a lot there. Why don't we start with just talking about self-service BI and the Power BI world? So at Blue Margin, we've devoted ourselves to the Microsoft Stack, Azure, Synapse, Power BI, those types of things around BI. So how, what are the things that Power BI does to enable self-service BI?
Yeah, so there's some things like that are very close to everything else that to the other things that other BI tools do for you, right? Like dragging and drop, right? That's one of the big selling points of a tool like Power BI is that you can just drag things. It's really easy to create visuals and stuff, and so Power BI does that, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. But as you said, other tools do it. Tableau does that. Qlik does it. In fact, most modern tools do that. I do think Power BI does a really good job of making that simple, displaying the data model, what measures are available, and so on. But you're right, a lot do that. There is a thing in the Power BI world which has been there for a long time and doesn't get a lot of traction typically, although I think it's possible it's going to start to get more and more, and that's natural language querying. So the user can go in and actually just type in, and do this right now, give me sales by month for the last 12 months, something like that. And assuming your system is set up well, so you've got good metadata so that the system knows what measures to go to and what data to work on, you can get interesting results there. It'll even do, simple visualizations and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool feature that they've rolled out, and it's been out for a couple of years. But you're right. I mean, you have to get everything set up the way that tool is expecting it to be set up. Otherwise, it might get confused. There's sometimes where you'll see in data models where you have two of the same column. They're named the same thing, but they're in different tables. So then you have to name the table in your question. It's like you have to set things up to where it works well with that. But a really powerful option for just getting people used to using the data and just going and asking a question. It's that easy.
Yeah. And I think as, people are more and more used to using their personal digital assistants, Siri and Google and that type of thing. And we're starting to see these generative AI text chat engines and so on. I think people will start coming to this more and more. So this is probably going to be something where I'm sure Microsoft is spending a lot of effort on that. And I think implementers such as Blue Margin, such as ourselves, will need to really start to focus on that because I bet users are going to start expecting it more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, that's kind of broader than just self-service too, right? There's, if you think about just society, people are just wanting to do things themselves more and more, right? You're just going to Google. You just want DoorDash to come to your door. You don't want to go out and deal with it. Like it's all about convenience and easy and quicker and getting the answers you need as fast as you can. And that's exactly what self-service is meant to do. And something like a natural language query it's kind of the perfect entry point.
Yeah, perfect on-ramp because you don't have to be technically skilled as long as it's set up well and giving you the answers you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Another thing about the Microsoft ecosystem that I think is useful for self-service is that you can have certified data sets. So IT can actually publish data sets where the data has been certified as clean and correct. And the measures that are available in the cubes and so on that are acting on that data also are, quote, certified. And so users can know if they're using a certified data set that they're likely to get good data. They don't have to worry about cleaning the data, for example.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a huge piece. And we're kind of touching on that governance side of self-service where you want to make sure people are looking at the right numbers, even though they're going and getting them on their own.
Yeah.
And something like a certified data set will hopefully get rid of that problem where an analyst is pulling a bunch of data out and then doing all kinds of transformations and filtering and stuff to get the number that they want. Hopefully that's all done on the backside before it gets to the report. And then you know how to do that and you have good reports.
Yeah. And it's not just that the analyst has to do all sorts of transforms and cleaning and so on, but we certainly see that an analyst will do some work on data and then present that and have someone else in another part of the company say, that's not right. And now there's a discussion or argument about how they're calculating certain things and where they got the data. And it just sort of adds noise to the system as opposed to if everybody's working off of certified data sets, you have a lot less of that.
Yeah, that's another really good aspect of this around governance is choosing what a measure means and aligning on it as a company. So I know we just see it over and over where people are like, we have two different definitions of the same measure. Right. And if they're lucky, it's only two.
Net profit. You can calculate a bunch of different ways depending on what you're including in the calculation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then also I think it's great to have the certified data sets, but also then the ability to put your own data in there as well, and even join it to certified data sets. So you can enable your users to actually bring their own sort of custom rolled data. And it will have some of those problems that we were talking about with the governance and so on, but sometimes that's really necessary to do the analysis that citizen BI developers want to do.
Right. I mean, it's kind of a journey, right, to get to self-service because for that example, you're going to still have budgets in Excel, right, that you don't upload to some system yet.
Right.
Maybe ideally in the future you could do that. But right now, you don't want to just say we can't do that. So you want to enable that ability still. And that what you're talking about is exactly how you would do that.
That's a great example. So maybe there is an official budget, but maybe your department head has asked you to do some analysis against a proposed budget that they want to work on. And so it's not uploaded anywhere. So, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Great example. So we've been talking about, you've mentioned governance a couple times. I guess we could get into what are some of the adoption challenges and the considerations for going into self-service. So when you think of governance, what does that mean to you at sort of a high level?
I think, we've kind of touched on it already, but it's knowing what people are using in terms of data and how they're using it and feeling confident that it's correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Would you include measures? I guess you would. You would include that as well. So it's not just the underlying data, but how are they doing calculations?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you can filter data out and stuff in your calculations. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So another big consideration is obviously training. So you can't just set up a system and say, hey, good news, everybody. You can now do self-service BI. You're going to get a lot of blank stares.
Right.
So you've got to have some kind of an adoption plan to actually train analysts. And we were talking before we started recording about sort of where do you start in a company. And really, you almost have to start with enterprise-wide BI. And by enterprise, I don't mean huge company, but just the company-wide BI so that you've got a foundation, a basis to build the self-service off of.
Right.
And from there, you can start moving to more and more granular user groups. So you can go to, departmental level BI or team BI and eventually get to individual BI. You don't have to go through all those. You could jump to individual BI, but you really need that initial base of, a data warehouse, data lake, certified data, or at least clean data and accept it as this is what we're going to use before you can really start training the users on how to get the most out of it.
Right. And governance and training are, closely related. You want people to use the tool in a way that's going to work really well for their data and how you've set it up and actually get the most out of it to hopefully increase the likelihood of adoption. It's interesting. When I worked at this other large company where we rolled out BI, the way that we did it was just straight to departmental type BI. So I was an analyst in a department, and I got trained on how to use QlikView, and then I had to go figure out how to make things happen. That was basically it. Like I just got trained, and then I went and did it. And you could see how in some departments that worked really well, and in others that just fizzled out. And I think the reason why is they didn't start with that kind of core foundation to kind of get the buy-in from the company first, and then enable the users like the analysts like myself to be able to build specific reports and kind of do that self-service stuff for the departments.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you got to have that foundation. Then you've got training. Then there's a concept of a center of excellence. And we think this is something that's going to be really important in order for self-service adoption to happen. Can you describe how you see a center of excellence?
Yeah. The best way I can think to describe it is it's like a chat room that you would be able to go and ask a question, and there would be people that moderate the room and would give you an answer and help you out, help you make progress into what you're doing. I think it's a little bit more than that, but I think that's the bulk of really what it's supposed to do is kind of be that support center for your BI initiative.
Yeah, so giving self-service users somewhere to go to ask questions. So usually it would be populated by a group of more expert users who really know the data, know the business environment, know the business rules, that type of thing. In our case, we can provide that center of excellence as the company's getting up and going. But you have this concept of a chat room or office hours or just someone you can go to that's going to help advise you on best practices and how to use the data and how to connect and get to the training and solve a specific problem, all of that stuff.
Right. Because no matter how good your training is, there's going to be some real world scenario that your training didn't cover. And it may be very, very simple, but if you don't have the answer and a quick answer to it, it can really hurt you.
Yeah. And then another really important thing is just to have good support. The whole point of self-service BI is not to have to go to IT every time you need something. But guess what? There are going to be times you need to go to IT. So you might, as you're doing your analysis, figure out, okay, I do need another set of data that's not available and need to go and talk to someone about making that available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to have a system for that, right, of pulling in new data sources. And even further than that, this kind of fits into support, but not really. But I'm going to say it anyway. Where let's say you've got a self-serve made report and it's starting to gain traction in the company and it becomes a report that everybody wants to see. You also have to have a way to move that report from the self-service, build into like a production ready foundational report.
That's right.
And getting that back up in there is going to have to involve some IT support.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's something we might have mentioned to start with, a lot of times self-service BI does result in a more widely distributed report. So someone's doing some analysis and they discover some really clever way or useful way to look at the data in order to drive decisions. And someone will realize, okay, we need to make this available more broadly. And that's where you need the support. How do you make that happen?
Right. I mean, it's a great thing. That's ultimately what you want, right? That'd be fantastic if you got that all over the place. So you definitely want to make that as easy as possible to enable it.
Yep. Okay. So how do you get started? Let's say you want to do self-service BI at your company.
Yeah. So I think it really has to start at that enterprise BI level with building a foundation. You're going to have your IT, your technical folks do that for you, get you into a place where you've got some pillar reports. You're starting to see the adoption. And then at that point, you can kind of move your way. Hopefully you'll be able to skip a few rungs. Like maybe you don't have to go to departmental. You can go straight to self-service. But you have to start with that foundation. Once you have the foundation, and then you can start adding things and optimizing your foundation for this self-service model.
Yeah. And obviously you can start with sort of beta users, maybe slightly more technical individuals, so that you can start to figure out, okay, where are the rough edges we need to sand off before we start to roll this out more broadly. But then you've got to think about, all right, the training, the governance, Center of Excellence, those things all don't have to be perfectly in place. You can do it in an iterative manner so that you're bringing on some users, you're learning some things, you're iterating those things, and then ramping it up as you get it more broadly. I mean, hopefully you get to a point where, I mean, it's, at some point, every department has people that are able to do this on their own self-service analysis.
Right. Yeah. That's the ultimate goal, right? And I guess that kind of touches on something we didn't really speak to here, but really about the culture of the company. You know, if people don't really want this,
right,
good luck, you know, but
yeah.
you need to make sure that you have some sponsorship and you've got a culture that is using data now and is kind of hungry for it as is. That'll make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you don't have that, you're probably not going to spend the effort to make it happen.
Right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, in this time with how important data has become and continues to become more and more important, you're probably going to find that in most companies, I think. But you do need to have that. And I think, you know, having champions, people who are actually using it and sort of showing how useful it is and able to sort of lead the way is really important.
Yeah, right. Yeah, having a few quick wins goes a long ways to getting people excited about it.
Definitely does. All right. Anything else you wanted to cover?
I don't think so.
All right. It's been good sitting with you.
All right.
See you soon.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Bye.
See you.